welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. I am excited to have with me once again Ernie Quiroz. Welcome to the show, Ernie.
Hey, welcome. Thank you.
And Ernie is back again, and we are going to talk about art house foreign films this year that have come out this year. You can tell I'm excited about it. I'm so excited I can't even talk.
Horror. I think you said
Horror.
porn. Art house horror.
Did I say foreign films? Well, some of them are, but yeah, horror films. Actually, none of the, yeah, no, one of them is foreign. So, art house horror films, and there's already been quite a few this year. We actually had several that we debated whether we were going to review them or not, and these are the four we selected. And so we're going to just kick it right off with our first film, which is Crimes of the Future by the great David Cronenberg, going back to his roots after he did a detour the last few years, making kind of more serious art house movies with Viggo Mortensen. This time he brings Viggo back for another body horror film set in the future, a future world where Viggo plays a celebrity performance artist who showcases the metamorphosis of his organs in front of audiences. His partner in crime in this case is played by the great French actress Léa Seydoux, and who is just, you could just look at her all day. I'm sure everyone would. And Kristen Stewart is also along for the ride as hmm, how would we describe her character? She is kind of like a government scientist who is part of this organization that is in charge of cataloging all the new organs that people are growing on their bodies in this future world. And the idea of this movie is that people's bodies have become so used to the synthetic world that they actually their own bodies have started metamorphosizing. Vigo's character, he seems to be doing this more rapidly even than other people, where he's growing new organs at an alarming rate, and he's making it into art. There's some really, if you're a fan of David Cronenberg, I really felt like this film was almost like Videodrome meets Crash, because there's a lot of stuff, especially that reminded me of his film Crash. Now, not the Crash that became an Oscar winner that came out years later, but the Crash with James Spader, the sexy Crash that was in the early 90s. Um, or maybe I guess mid to late 90s actually. Wow, I'm aging myself. The one of there's a lot of cool stuff in this movie. One of the things I love, there's all these like apparatuses. So there's this thing that people, not just Vigo's character, but people kind of sleep in, because there's these machines, because people's bodies have become so synthetic that they're not comfortable in like certain positions. So they sit in these contraptions that like feed them and help them sleep in these kind of like ideal ways, I guess you could say. And I think one of the things that he does that's really interesting is that everything looks like the normal world. There's nothing, when he goes outside of his room, there's not like big sky. It doesn't look like Blade Runner or something. The world looks pretty much like the world looks now. Um, but it's the actual internal things that are changing inside people to adapt to their environment. And so it's pretty interesting take. I'm curious what you thought, Ernie.
Yeah, I mean to succinctly describe this film as a challenge. There's a
I know,
lot.
as you could see, I had a hard time with it.
There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot going on, and I honestly, I like this film. I wanted to like it more.
Hmm.
I definitely I think Cronenberg's strong suit is the world building and the body horror. It is definitely a very Videodrome. Reminded me of Videodrome. I have not seen Crash, but I understand there's a lot of thematic similarity between Crash and sort of because that film sort of dealt with people who derive sexual satisfaction from being involved in crashes or just sort of
Exactly.
being around that. So this is very similar. I think one of the characters says surgery is the new sex.
Right.
Again, and it's also sort of thematically similar to Videodrome. Uh, Overall, I felt at times the film sort of got bogged down in some of the mythology and some of the philosophy that it didn't to the detriment of the film. But
Hmm.
like I said, you know, I think Cronenberg fans are definitely going to appreciate it. If you're not maybe familiar with Cronenberg, or if you're sort of new to Cronenberg, this maybe isn't the best film to sort of enter
Yeah, to
enter
start.
just to start with, enter his filmography. Uh, but no, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. I thought I'm a Kristen Stewart convert now, so it was interesting to see her in sort of this odd role. And like you said, Leia Seydoux, um,
Just beautiful, and she's a good
Beautiful.
actress too, not
Yeah,
just eye candy. She's a good actress.
not just eye
Character's
candy.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was unclear to me what her relationship with was at Vigo at first. Because at first I was like, oh, he's so much older than her, which I know is a Hollywood thing, but they're not exactly a romantic couple. In part because that's sort of not a thing anymore, right? Like they say, like people get sexual by watching people get surgery or cut up. And so it's very much like Crash, where people are so desensitized, where only the car crash turns them on. This movie becomes only seeing someone get cut open happens.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
Cronenberg is revisiting familiar themes. And that's the only thing about it that was a little disappointing, but I felt like he put enough twists on it. And there was some real surprises, particularly with the Kristen Stewart character, who at first you think is kind of this nerdy government worker who is not into the whole thing, and her character turns out to be something quite different than we realized. So I liked that little twist. So I did enjoy the film. I don't think it's as great as his masterpieces of body horror, but I almost felt like he was kind of like, after the last few years of all these other filmmakers like Titan and all these other body horror movies coming out, he was like, hey, I used to
Yeah.
make those, I'm going to start making those again. Everyone's ripping me off, I can rip myself off.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I don't know. Ultimately, I felt maybe a little bit more longing for some of his early work, like Videodrome and Shivers, and even The Fly, something more accessible like The Fly. I kept thinking like, well, maybe I should rewatch those films. They sort of
You should
uh,
watch Crash if you've never seen it, but it's pretty
yeah.
hard to watch. I mean, it was really shocking at the time when it came out in the 90s. It's actually the first hate mail I ever got for a movie review I wrote. I was working for a newspaper at the time in the West Valley, and I wrote a movie review, a positive movie review of Crash, and someone actually went and saw it and then asked what kind of twisted, weird, messed up person gave that movie a good review. And I would be like, that is me. I was in college and I was already messed up. Thank you very much.
All right, well
So,
that's good enough reason for me
badge of
to
honor there.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly, yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on.
So my first film is it's called You Won't Be Alone. It's by a filmmaker named Goran Stolevski. It's from Serbia, and it's definitely, if we're talking art house horror, this is the art house horror. When you think of that genre, this is it. Premiered at Sundance. It's available now on streaming, and sort of the easy way to describe, well, plot wise, it sort of centers, I think it takes place in 19th century Serbia, sort of centers on this young woman who becomes a witch. And she meets this ancient spirit, and she becomes this witch, and I think she kills this other peasant girl, and then she's a shapeshifter, and she kind of becomes this other girl, and it's basically is able to experience life through by becoming this other girl. And so most of the movie is actually sort of about her sort of learning what it's like to be human, of being sort of this other spirit or this other witch, and then by becoming this young girl, of learning what that means and what that's like. And so it's very much in the vein of the folk horror films that we've sort of seen in the last couple of years, with obviously the connection with The Witch or The
Hmm.
Northman, or Midsommar, Hereditary. So it's sort of dealing with all these folk sort of horror issues, but in a very artistic way. And I think a lot of the easy comparison that a lot of people make with this film is Terrence Malick, which
Hmm.
which which is either you love him or you hate him. But I love Terrence Malick, and I think there's a big portion of the film that is very much like Tree of Life, like a where it's just this very lyrical, poetic film. And if you've seen a lot of Terrence Malick, and you've seen sort of the rip-off Terrence Malick, it's easy to make bad Terrence Malick. I think this is a good sort of a riff on the Terrence Malick feeling of films. But this is definitely, there are some horror elements for sure, but I think it's definitely more, this would be more in the art house category.
Yeah. And it's not as, the one thing I found slightly disappointing is I would say it's less of there are horror elements. I wouldn't, but it did not, unlike The Witch, which you referred to, which is one I did think about as I was watching it because it had the folklore aspect. It's not, The Witch actually scared me in parts. This movie really didn't scare me. It was more just intriguing, like where it was going next. But I would say the Malick meets kind of the horror genre is pretty accurate because of the use of the voiceover and all the pastoral landscapes and everything.
Hmm.
The part that I thought was the most fascinating and subversive is how this woman, because she, I'm trying to think without giving too much away, but she has these witches have this ability to sort of um, go into different figures, different bodies, including not just other people, but animals. And so she takes on different personas as the film goes on. And then that perspective shifts, including when she goes into the body of an animal and then goes into a white man's body. And that was interesting to me because up until then, it's this very female centric film. And then she becomes this man and she starts to realize like what it's like to be in this body of this
Hmm.
strong virile
Yeah,
white man who's basically able to just kind of do anything and nobody seems to care what he's doing.
yeah, yeah.
And I
No,
thought that was great.
yeah. I think that's what I really like about sort of, if you want to pin this genre down to art house horror, is that you take some of these horror elements, but then you end up um, diving deeper into stories or ideas and doing things that maybe a typical horror film won't do. So like the ideas of femininity
Right.
or of sexual identity and things like that. They can explore these ideas that a typical slasher film
Mm-hmm.
won't have. So uh,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah, so I really appreciate that about this film. I think maybe I liked it a little bit better than you, but it's still. Uh, I think this is a film that, like a lot of art house horror, if people are coming at it's sort of a weird. If you're a horror fan and you're coming to it, you're gonna think like, what is this arty farty stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're like a Terrence Malick cinephile, you might be off put by like these horror elements. So it's almost like a film that's designed to appeal to no one.
Or people like you and me that like a wide range of things. Like, because I love a good horror film and I love art, arty farty to use your description.
Yeah,
Malick films. I can watch Tree of Life. I like Tree of Life. It was in my top 10 that year. So, and not everyone likes that movie. Some people find unbearably pretentious, and
yeah,
it is unbearably pretentious in the most awesome way possible. So,
yeah.
I no, I did like this movie. I didn't love it, but I definitely liked it. I think I was a little surprised because Naomi Rapace I don't know if I was saying her name right, but from the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movies and many others. But she's kind of like a big star, and I thought she was going to be in the movie more than she actually was. So that was also sort of interesting
Yeah.
that she took on a smaller role.
Yeah. Like it's a very narrow sliver, I think, of people that this film will appeal to.
Yeah, no, I think
Um,
that's definitely true. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
The next film of our four is called X. This is directed by Ty West. Premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival. Again, it's on streaming now. I would say this probably has a bigger appeal. This is probably the most appealing film of I think the four films. This is by far the most graphic, the most horror genre films of the four. So this is about a group of kids, young adults, who this takes place sort of in the 70s, who are making a pornographic film and go up to a sort of a semi-abandoned farm to shoot this pornographic film. And while they're there, they meet the caretakers, these sort of old people that they don't like those youngins. And then murders ensue. All these over the top sort of graphic murders take place because, of course, these kids are having sex. Um,
That good, Ernie? You didn't
yeah,
like it?
I did not like it.
Huh.
This was, I was so looking forward to this film because it got really great reviews and a lot of people were just really, really singing the praises of this film. Um, I did not like it at all. I just really, really did not like it. To me, it just felt so. Again, sort of the easy comparison is Texas Chainsaw Massacre and sort of like all
Hmm.
those 70s sort of slasher films. Just sort of had this dirty, grimy feeling
Oh, I know. I
to
loved
it.
that. I loved
uh,
it.
which I love. And then also it sort of starts out as Boogie Nights, so sort of like these young kids making this porno film. And honestly, neither. So it takes a long time to get going because the horror sort of elements really don't come in till I felt like almost an hour into the film. So you're sort of you're led thinking it's going to go one way, and then it immediately changes into another thing, which they reference in the film because they reference the film Psycho, and I think Psycho is interesting comparison because again, like Psycho, is sort of you're led to think the film's going one way and then it goes another way. But
Hmm.
to me, either way it was going, it didn't work for me.
It's so
uh,
interesting. I guess I'm with the critics who liked it because I thought it worked. I thought what he was going for, the exploitation, just grimy, like the loud soundtrack with the score was just like perfect, and these like young, oversexed, over-tanned people out in this like, house with the barn out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I knew, and yeah, you're right. It takes for a long time for something to happen, but I liked that because, and then once it goes where it goes, I did not know that it was going where it went with the old people that live in the place next door. I thought it was going somewhere entirely different than that.
well,
So,
the whole sex stuff at the beginning, was a little bit boring and it was a little bit like, okay, let's get to the point. And then by the time you got to the horror elements, it almost made me feel like, oh, maybe that sex stuff wasn't so bad. I kind of like that stuff. Let's go back to
hmm,
that. Uh, to me,
interesting.
to me, I don't know. It it kept hinting at something. Again, we don't want to spoil the movie. I felt like there was going to be some sort of big reveal or some sort of big twist, and it never really came. And I felt like maybe there was like a missing 10 or 15 minutes
Hmm.
where maybe they explain more of exactly why these people are doing what they're doing. I mean, the older people. And to me, it fell flat. I kept waiting for something and it never came.
Well, I think you're explaining why people are doing what they're doing in a horror movie is because they're in a horror movie. I mean, why does Freddy go after people? I mean, I guess they actually do explain that somewhat in those movies,
well,
but
well,
getting into like psychology of why people go psychotic is
Well,
a little bit
not
like,
even a psychology, but there's this vague hint of this religious cult, and I know Ty West has done. Um, he made this movie called Sacrament, where again he sort of deals with religious weirdos and sort of the way religion can sort of affect people. So you get this hint that maybe this was like a weird religious cult, or there was something going on because you get that scene at the very beginning with the sheriffs and like, oh, you got to watch this, and they're watching some movie or something. But that is never really addressed. It's never really, I don't know.
it's kind of a red herring, I
It's
thought, if
kind
they
of
were
a
doing that
red,
on purpose. Yeah.
but then it's kind of brought up at the end, and again, there's a twist of who this woman is, the lead actress in the film, and she does play dual roles in
Which
the
I
film,
thought was great because
which
I did not know it was her. I saw it in the theater at Salem Cinema, and I was sitting there watching it, going, "Wow, they're both." I had no idea it was
yeah,
the same person.
yeah,
So until the very end.
yeah, that I didn't know either, which I thought was interesting. But again, that felt like almost after the fact when I found that out, I was like, oh, that's almost felt like a gimmick just to make it more interesting because
Yeah, this guy,
the
this whole
film,
concept of like you're only going to be this young, virile, attractive person for so long. Eventually everyone ages and these
yeah,
things happen to your body that are outside of your control, right? And so these people are trying to reckon with that. And if you wanted to get serious about it, I just thought it was fun as a slasher movie and enjoyed all the jumps and the people coming out of the forest and the scene with the alligator in the pond. And I thought they made good use of like the creepy bayou type environment they were
yeah.
in. And
See,
so, yeah, and I liked the look of it and the fact it was highly stylized, and the people were stupid just like they should be in horror movies. And I mean, it was a throwback. It was sort of obviously a throwback to something like Texas Chainsaw or those types of movies, but for me, I appreciated it. And it was just nice that it wasn't just another remake of Texas Chainsaw because I wish they would just like stop doing that. Like, okay, you can make something gritty and kind of exploitation like that without being exactly Texas
yeah,
Chainsaw, which is
yeah,
what I think he was going for. So,
yeah.
anyway, I
I don't know.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, for me, I mean, there's a fine line between homage and being derivative, and for me, it fell on the side of being derivative.
Derivative,
Yeah.
interesting. What about the
So
performances? Because the girl with the
yeah,
freckles, I thought was quite good for
no,
what she was given to do,
yeah,
especially.
yeah. Again, there were a lot of interesting elements. I thought, but the kills at the end were just, I don't know. It did not work for me. So
Interesting. Well, it's too bad we didn't get to review Men because I would have really liked to sink my teeth into that one with you. Because talk about a movie that goes all sorts of crazy places. But another time perhaps. So you can't recommend that one. I'm recommending it. So we disagreed on that one, but on the first two we pretty much agreed, I think,
Yeah,
that we like
yeah,
them. So okay.
yeah.
So we'll move on to our last one, which is Fresh, directed by Mimi Cave. I believe it's her directorial debut. And this one features kind of a common trope as as the movie starts. The movie, you think, oh, I've seen this before. It's a young woman is having bad luck on the dating scene. She's, dating guys on dating apps and just sort of dating one loser after another. And then she meets a charming man in a grocery store and, decides to take a chance and gives him her number. And they start dating. And she decides to be adventurous because her friend encourages her to and go on a weekend away with him. And things go horribly wrong in ways that she could never predict. Um, Turns out Mr. Perfect is oh so bad. And so we kind of know where this is going to a certain degree, but it goes much farther than even I actually thought at first. Turns out Mr. Perfect is part of kind of an illegal market of doing horrible things to women. So it again another different take on the exploitation movie, but this time with a female director behind the camera. We have a little bit of a twist on it as the movie, probably almost three-fourths in, or maybe a little over halfway through, kind of tries to reverse the exploitation of women, and the women start to get their revenge as the movie goes on. Um, there's some things I really liked about this movie, but one thing I will tell you that I'm really angry about it for is that for a week after I've watched it, I've had the Richard Marx song in my head every single day, and I'm really angry about that. And I think that is worth getting half a star demoted from the film for a Richard Marx song being stuck in my head because the boyfriend, while he's cutting up parts of women in his kitchen, blasts cheesy 80s soft rock music. And that particular song stuck in my head of all the songs that were in this movie.
Yeah, there was I appreciate some of the use of some of the music in the film, and there's actually one point where I kind of got distracted because I didn't know if you noticed there's this cover of a Radiohead song
Uh-huh.
that that just ended up distracting me because I was like, I know this song, and then I tried to think like, well, what is this song more than like what's
Uh-huh.
happening in the scene? But there's some interesting use of music in the film. This is not this is definitely not as graphic or as hardcore, maybe what you maybe described it, or and certainly not some of the other films.
No, no. They
It,
actually keep away from
they
showing most
keep,
of it.
yeah, yeah. It's on Hulu. I would say this is maybe like a mild recommendation for me. I think I'm maybe 3 stars out of
That's
five.
where I am with it. 3 stars,
Yeah.
yeah.
I felt that some of the tone, again, I felt like if maybe they had gone more into a hard R, I think it may have worked better for me. I
Hmm.
think it tried to find this odd balance of maybe not being too graphic, because essentially Sebastian Stan is the lead character in this film, who most people probably know from the Captain America films. I felt like this is sort of his way, or from the Tommy Lee, what was it, the Pamela uh, docu series or
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
Yeah,
Was he in that? I didn't see it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's sort of his new claim to fame. So I think this is a way for him to sort of play different roles, and maybe people are used to seeing him from these Marvel movies. So I think they kind of knew, like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna try to get some of that Marvel audience. So let's not go too graphic. Let's not go into the hard R or even NC-17 territory. Let's kind of maybe go like a softer or medium R, which I don't know, felt a little tame in comparison for what the subject matter is. I kind of went into this a little bit blind. I didn't know. I mean, I knew a little bit of what it was about. I thought maybe this was like vampires or something like that, but it's more dealing with cannibals and sort of dealing with this weird underground society, like you said, of these men who
Rich
like
men who
rich
enjoy
men
eating.
who enjoy eating women because female meat tastes the best.
Hmm.
Um, and like you said, like we've sort of been saying, there's a lot of interesting ideas here. There's some sort of social commentary, some subtext that I think is very intriguing. Um, I don't think it quite capitalizes on all of that, and it didn't quite work for me. But it was enjoyable. There's still some really great elements to it. Uh, and I do like, I mean, the opening credits don't come into like a half hour into the film,
Into
so
the
it's
film,
almost
yeah.
yeah, which I feel like that's a new trend of so you're almost led to think it's sort of this rom-com thing, and then it kind of goes in a different direction.
Yeah, the film, I think it's a promising directorial debut. It's definitely not a perfect film. It's somewhere, I was kind of veering between 2.5 and 3 stars as I was watching it because there were too many things. Unlike X, which I liked more than you did, to me, it just kind of had a boring look to it too. It didn't have like anything of interest visually. The main actors, Sebastian Stan, I just thought was like, okay, he's like the creepy 80s looking guy, whatever. The main actress, who's currently in this art house movie where the crawdads sing, she's just a nice kind of plain. I mean, she's just like a regular looking girl. I guess she looks fine, but her character has no backstory. We don't really know anything about her. She's just kind of like, oh, I'm dating, and then she, of course, her best friend is black, and then, you know, I get kind of tired of like the African American characters always being like these like side characters that are brought in to make the main white character more interesting, and so
Yeah,
I was kind of
yeah,
rolled my eyes when the friend came in because I was like, oh gosh, really, and then the friend has this kind of like ex-boyfriend who is also who's a bartender who also kind of comes into the story, but then his thing doesn't really go anywhere. So there was just, and like you said, I think the reason she probably avoided the gore also to the extent she did is because, it's on this fine line, as we've seen with some of these previous films we talked about, between exploitation and not. So I think we were dealing with a movie about women's body parts. And so I think maybe the director was trying to like ride this line between just the idea of it being gross enough without showing a lot of it. But then there was an element of like, if you're going to make a slasher movie of sorts, like, or whatever she's trying to do here, like you kind of almost have to go for it at some extent.
yeah, and I felt like maybe there was I don't know if they were trying for humor or they were playing things for comedy more than maybe what they realized, or maybe it just came off that way. But like you said, like the scene with Sebastian Stan where he's sort of cutting up the body and he's singing to this 80s song, I think they were trying to be really funny, but it just didn't work for me. It just kind of came off as again very derivative and
Yeah.
just tonally, I don't think they had the right tone for a lot. It could work. That could work as being very campy and very,
Hmm.
ironically funny, but they just
Not quite there. Yeah. I
think
didn't say it was a
didn't.
total failure, but
Yeah,
I think it'll be interesting to see what she makes next. So I'll be excited for future films by this director. I think, for a first time effort, not bad though. So I think our big Pulp Crimes of the Future, I really can recommend. It sounds like You Won't Be Alone was probably your big
yeah,
recommendation,
yeah.
right?
That was
From
my
this
big
episode.
recommendation. And then, of course, yeah, Cronenberg. If you're a fan of Cronenberg, I think that's an easy sell.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me, Ernie. Always amazing to talk to you. I know you'll be back in August, I hope, to review the Javier Bardem movie or something else with me. As always, you can check out our reviews on our website, realfilmsnobs.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that bell and subscribe so you can see future episodes. We're also on Facebook. We're on CC Media, Scan TV in Silverton, Corvallis Access Media, KMUZ Radio, and KMWV. I'd like to thank our fantastic crew, especially Brad, for taping and editing the show, and our amazing sponsors. Thank you so much. Have a great day and great movies. Bye bye.
Bye.